Everyone, welcome to Tuesday. And of course, every Tuesday we take a look at the performance of the main board for the New Zealand Stock Exchange. Now, coming up on Thursday at 10:30, I'm going to do a YouTube live where you can ask me anything to do with finance, investing, anything you like. And in fact, we've already got a couple of questions regarding share markets and things. So stay tuned for that. Or if you do have a question, by all means, pop it in the notes, pop it in the comments, or direct message me, and I'm happy to answer it. And then that way, if you can't attend live, you can certainly listen to the recording at a time that's convenient for you. Now, just before I share my screen, just remember that this is for educational purposes only, definitely not intended to be personalised financial advice. If you're looking for that, you do need to go and have a chat to your own financial advisor. Here we have the NZSX 50 up on the screen, being the gross index for the New Zealand market. And you can see here we have had 4 weeks in a row now that the market has fallen. And you can see that the highs ended up being at around 13,700. We're now down at 12,900. So we've seen roughly an $800 fall, if you like, in the New Zealand market in these last 4 weeks. If I look down the bottom, we've got the volume, and you can see that there is a lot of volume with this selling pressure. Now, whether that's people taking profits where they can, or whether people are deciding, crikey, things are only going to get worse, I want to get out, who knows? The charts are certainly telling us that there is definitely a lot of selling going on. If I zoom in and look at this last candle here for last week, the good thing about it is that we've got a very long tail down the bottom and a very small wick at the top. What that does mean is, even though the sellers sort of won for the day, the buyers were trying to wrestle it back, and that's what that wick at the bottom is actually telling us, that there were a lot more buyers out there. However, they didn't win the overall tussle. The sellers certainly did, but this maybe could be potentially some sort of turning point. Who knows? I'm certainly not going to guess that by any stretch of the imagination, but that's sort of the only positive we can take out of last week. You can see by the dashed line there, you can see we're sort of bisecting some of these candles back in around February 2024. Now, if the share market falls to around this 12,700 level, that could potentially be a line of support. Who knows? No one really knows that, but it could be a baseline forming potentially that the market could hit and then go forward. I'm certainly not speculating. It's just something that could potentially happen. However, if we go forward, and you can see here back in July last year, we did have that base of just over 12,000 points. So who knows? Only time will certainly tell what is really going to happen. We'll just jump over to the 1-year chart and just have a look. The 1-year chart brings these candles up to daily candles. And you can see here that on Wednesday, there was quite a bit of buying going on. Not a lot of volume when I look down the bottom. The volume was only about 21 million. But if I go back a few days, you can see that there was $157 million worth of shares traded back on the 20th of March. So it is a good sign that we saw that green candle. And then the following day was also a green candle. However, it's got a very strong wick and a very low tail. So no surprises that Friday ended up being a down day. Right, we will just go and pop on our moving averages. So we'll make this one our 30 exponential. You can see there that the market is trading well below that 30-day moving average. And we will also put on the 15-day. Like I say, nothing special with these moving averages. They are what I consistently use whenever I do share trading. And it just gives me an idea as to what the market's doing. And you can see here that these moving averages on the daily chart, they crossed at the 9th of March, so earlier this month, and they are still in free fall. That's certainly not a good sign. So we do need to keep an eye on that. Let's go and see what it's also saying for the 5-year chart. And look at that. The market is below both of those moving averages. That 15-week moving average now is getting really close to that 30. If it crosses through and it ends up being below that red line, that is what we refer to as a dead cross. So that is very negative for the markets. Okay. Now, remember, I do not enter any trades unless the overall market is trading above both of those moving averages, and the blue line in this case being my 15-week moving average is up above the 30-week, which it is at the moment, but the market overall is trading below both of those. So definitely a negative sign. Now, the other thing I'm going to pop on is the average true range. Now, I pop this over a 21 period, so 21 week. And what I'm doing is I'm wanting to see what the volatility is. So down the bottom here, over 21 weeks, you can potentially expect the New Zealand share market to move about $273 in any one week. Obviously, there will be periods that it'll be higher than that, but this just gives us a bit of an average. So we'll take that figure, 273.92, and we'll just divide it where the market is at the moment, which is 12,935.39, and we'll just pop that into a percentage. And we're looking at about 2.11% volatility. So it's under that 5%. If the volatility ends up at around 5% for the overall market, again, I want to stay out. So that is not too bad. Now, not a lot to report. Obviously, I have found that during the week, I had about 3 shares that my stop losses were hit, and so they were naturally sold out of the market. I haven't had any that I was able to increase my stop losses on, so I'm certainly in a holding pattern. Not looking at buying, haven't increased stop losses, but certainly having been sold out of a few. I really hope that's helped. If you've got any questions, let me know. And remember, I do have the YouTube live coming up at 10:30 on Thursday. Love to see you there, but by all means, pop through any questions that you've got. Now, I have also had a request for share and review on Thursday, and that is on Ryman Healthcare. So do come back and take a look at that, and we'll see how that's been performing. So until Thursday, take care.